I want to get into a particular case now, firstly because it's an interesting case, and secondly because it's a case that shows how the government can spin the UFO subject. And again, this plays into this idea of downplaying the subject. I mean, you know, I'm sure everyone can see the central absurdity that if UFOs were really, as the Ministry of Defense said, of no defense significance, we wouldn't have generated 60,000 documents on the subject. The MOD is in the final stages of what will actually be an 8-year program to declassify and release its entire archive of files. And this is an image from one of the files. And it's a case, it's not hugely known outside the UK, but some of you may have come across it. It's called the Calvine incident. In August of 1990, 2 hikers in Scotland were walking in open countryside when they saw a large diamond-shaped object hovering maybe 200 feet above the ground. They saw in the background a military jet, but they weren't sure whether the jet was circling it in an attempt to intercept it or whether it was escorting it. I talked about this case because the file had been declassified. And one of the things that I had said was that for many years, I had a blown-up image of a photograph on my office wall, but that, and I said, I can't wait for this file to be declassified because wait till people see that UFO photo, it'll be great. And whatever you think about UFOs, it will certainly, you know, I think, cause some interesting debate. Well, when the Ministry of Defense declassified the file and released it, that is the only image that they released. And what it is that sometimes for the purpose of calculating the precise dimension of something shown in a photograph, you will do a line drawing of it. So various imagery analysis specialists in an organization called JARIC, Joint Aerial Reconnaissance and Intelligence Center, did a line drawing, and this is a poor photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy of one of the line drawings. What message does that send to the public? It sends the message, oh well, you know, if that's their best UFO photo, I'm not very impressed. Which again is consistent with the MOD's line of trying to downplay the subject. I called foul. I said, wait a minute, that's, you know, there's a much better photo than that around. And the Ministry of Defense said that they had lost it. And I asked whether they could look for it, and they looked for it, but they said they couldn't locate it. There's quite a long history of losing things like that in the Ministry of Defense. One of my favorite stories related to a sighting from a British warship, HMS Manchester, and Lord Hill Norton, a former chief of the defense staff who went on to be extremely interested in UFOs after he stepped down as CDS. And Chief of the Defense Staff, by the way, is the British post, which is the equivalent of the US position of Chairman of the Joint Chiefs. So he was a 5-star Navy Admiral, and he asked for the Ministry of Defense, he said, I've been told that the crew of this warship had a UFO encounter, and it was tracked on the ship's radar. A lot of the sailors saw it visually. Some of the other ships in the NATO exercise saw it too. Can I have, under the Freedom of Information Act, the ship's log. Lord Hill Norton, retired 5-star admiral, was told that the ship's log for the period of time in question had been accidentally blown overboard by a freak gust of wind. Incompetence? Conspiracy? I don't know. But that's the only image that survived. And by the way, one time I was, with my boss, I was getting a briefing over in the Defense Intelligence Staff, and the DIS also had a large blown up copy of this photo. So if they genuinely lost it, they didn't just lose one, they lost at least two. And throughout the briefing, the intelligence briefer kept using the phrase, "these people." He said, well, these people flying the craft like this, he said, we want to know, what they're doing. And yet, throughout the entire briefing, nobody actually said, what do you mean, these people? But maybe he came close to disclosing his personal views when he said, look at that photo. He said, and he pointed, and he said, it's not the Americans, it's not the Russians, and that only leaves. We kind of looked at his finger, we looked up at the ceiling, and nothing was said. It's the great taboo, even in government, to say the dreaded word alien or extraterrestrial. Hell, we didn't even say UFO. A lot of the time we said UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena, particularly in our internal documents. In case you're wondering what it really looked like, earlier this year I flew to LA with a TV show, and they hooked me up with a graphic artist. We got beforehand all the declassified MOD documents, and including that image, and I then sat down with the graphic artist, and over a period of hours, using his skill and my recollection, I mean, this image was on my office wall for 3 years. I remember it, and we used that combination to recreate the image in the TV show, and what we came up with was this. That's what it really looked like. That's the best UFO government photo, that is the best photograph that the UK government ever had and says that it's lost. So there you are. We didn't know what it was. So sometimes the government knows that there's something that's not ours, but we don't know. I can tell you what UFOs aren't, but I can't tell you what they are. I can tell you that some are unidentified, but even we in the government didn't really know what we were dealing with.